Hi guys, how is everyone doing? Hopefully you guys are having a great time and learning a lot about 3D. Now, today I want to talk about a couple of things and a couple of I don't know how to call this, topics that have been popping out quite a bit in the comments on several of the shorts and the videos. And the first one, the elephant in the room, right, is of course AI, right? One of the very common questions that I get, and we've talked about AI before, is how do I personally feel about AI? How do I see AI affecting our industry? And what's going to happen in the future? Is it a good moment to become a 3D artist when you now have things like this, right? That can give you an AI stuff from an illustration. Like, do we really need AI or 3D artists anymore? And the answer is yes, guys. Don't be afraid of AI. That would be my main point. And again, this is my opinion. And what I mean by this is not to just ignore it, right? Because of course AI is doing a bunch of things that are very, very scary. I've been seeing some YouTube series and YouTube videos of people doing like the whole pipeline, going from a concept all the way down into Unreal and having the asset be ready for a game. So what I want to talk about, and this actually again comes back to the other topic, which is how's the industry doing nowadays, is that AI is this force, this technology that's creating something that I like to call, it's not that I made this thing, like I didn't embed this concept, it's called democratization, right? When there is a skill out there that only a few selected groups are able to use, and that skill starts getting like again transferred to a wider and wider audience, something called democratization happens, right? Like people are like the amount of people that are now part of the industry or part of the group of people that know how to do something in particular is bigger. And I'm gonna give you a perfect example. Photograph, right? Photograph back in the 90s, in the 80s, was something that only a few people could do because you would need like really specialized cameras to create something interesting, something unique. And as technology has been advancing, everyone, like we all have a smartphone, right? And you could potentially take your smartphone outside to the mountains, to the valleys or whatever, and take a very impressive picture. Now, what's the difference? And I'm gonna go full screen with this because this is important. What's the difference between someone who has the tool and someone who has the knowledge, right? If you have the tool, you can get lucky and you can create something that is good, that is actually valuable, and you're gonna be able to, I don't know, sell it, make a little bit of profit out of it. But if you don't have the tool, or the knowledge rather, if you don't have the knowledge and the understanding of why we do the things that we do, then you're gonna miss a very, very important part of the whole process, which is consistency, right? Because I can give the most powerful camera to someone who's just starting photograph and he will be able to take some nice pictures. But if I give a cheap camera to someone who has been doing photograph for 20 years, even with that cheap camera, that person is going to be able to take some amazing shots, because a camera is not the only thing that you need to take a good picture. Well, the same thing happens to 3D, my friends, okay? So prompts, right? Like this are like models, wireframes, 3D volumes. It's not the only thing that make a character a good character. It's not the only thing that make a concept or whatever a successful concept. And here's where we're gonna delve into another thing, which is about the state of the industry and the decisions that big companies are making. But my main takeaway, or the main point that I want to make about AI, because I know there's a lot of younger artists, younger students that are learning or starting in this path, and of course, a very common fear is, why should I spend 4 years of my life learning things about 3D art, structure, volume, anatomy, color theory, and all of these things if AI can do it for me, right? And the reason, again, is because you want to have the knowledge. You can then use AI as a tool. I've used AI, I've shown this before, to create textures, to sharpen my images. We use AI to generate some of the subtitles on our shorts. So AI it's a great tool, and I think it can definitely have a lot of value in our pipelines, make a lot of things easier. There was this very fun thing when I uploaded the topology short a couple of weeks ago where everyone was saying, I really wish that AI could do topology. Guys, we already have AI that does topology. It's called Siri Mesher. It's called auto meshing inside of Maya. It's called voxelizing. Like, there are tools already that make good topology. Now, is it perfect topology? No, and that's the point. Now, if you're willing or waiting for the perfect retopology AI that's gonna give you perfect loops everywhere, you might be waiting a while, okay? I'm not saying it's not gonna come. Like, it might happen in the next couple of years. I don't know. But in the meantime, studios are not just gonna like be like arms crossed and waiting for that to happen. They still need someone to know how to do things properly. And the same thing is for everything. Now, even if we had an AI, this is very, very important. Even if we had an AI that we could say, hey, I want a biking character with PBR textures, 4K maps divided into two UDIMs with this characteristics, blah, 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 and I give it the prompt, and it gives me a perfectly, like, amazing model, like, of Kratos, for instance, right? Like, at that level. Even then, guys, I can assure you that every single studio out there will want changes. If there's one thing that has been constant in my experience as an artist throughout this past 13 years, is the fact that there's always tweaks and modifications and little things that you might need to change here or there. It's like, oh, you know what, we're already midway down through production, and the characters that we picked at first, now we want to add hair, or we want to change the jacket, or we want to change some textures on some of the, I don't know, armor pieces. Well, if you need to do everything that you just did with AI, it's not going to be possible. It's going to be a lot easier if someone who already knows the pipeline can go in there, into the model, into the assets, and modify them. And again, this is going to happen for animation, it's going to happen for modeling, it's going to happen for pretty much everything, okay? By the way, sorry if it sounds a little bit noisy, it just started raining like very heavily over here. So, going back again to this that I was mentioning, AI will not go away. However, I have seen several like important articles in business magazines, in studio discussions. There's some Reddit posts that talk about this, where people, especially studio heads, are realizing that they placed a very big bet on AI, and it's not paying off. That's good news, because that means that people hopefully will start to realize the value that an individual, an artist, holds while being part of a team. So you cannot just fire 5 of your artists and hope that one single artist can do all of the work by using AI, because it's just not going to be possible. Now, talking about the industry now, because I know this is another very contentious topic. What's going on with the industry? We're in a crisis. We're in the middle of like a very bad situation. I've mentioned this before, but with COVID entertainment numbers increase. Let's see if we get like a chart or something. With COVID, something very interesting happened, and this is actually like I've talked to my wife about this. I've talked to her about how COVID was a horrible thing that happened to the whole world, but it showed I think it was a very cool sort of like reality check for everyone. And when I say cool, it's not that I find it fun or whatever. I just find it really, really interesting that we as a world, right, because this was worldwide, were able to sort of like reset a lot of things and check and realize, okay, this is important, this is not important. Let's sort of like sort our priorities out, right? So this right here, let me see if that's the incidents. There are charts right there that you can look up, but one of the things that you need to realize, guys, is that in 2020, so 2020, 2021, and 2022, we had a huge spike in entertainment consumption. And I can give you a very easy, like, a very easy example with D&D. D&D was a relatively big game, but with the pandemic, like, people had nothing else to do, and D&D, especially virtual games, right, with like Foundry or what was the other one, like Fantasy Grounds and things like that, it just exploded in popularity. Board games, Netflix series, video games, like a lot of things. Like, it was surprising to me how even my family, like close family, aunts, uncles, were playing things like Among Us, Fall Guys, and simple games that were easy to digest for someone that had never played games before. Unfortunately, nothing has that sort of like exponential growth, right? So it's very, very difficult to keep that exponential growth going in any industry. And that's where capitalism gets a little bit in the way. I'm not going to deny that that's an unfortunate sort of like situation with the economic system that we have most of the time in the world. So it's impossible to keep a perpetual growth all the time. Like, it's just very, very difficult. And with that perpetual growth, we get the fall, right? So after 2020, even here in Mexico, let me go full screen again. Even here in Mexico, and with the studio work that we did, we definitely saw a decline in the amount of work that we were getting, because people were realizing, hey, we've spent 2 years inside our houses just consuming as much entertainment as we could, and now we don't want to do that anymore. We want to go outside. We want to meet people. We want to experience other types of things. So consumption went down, and unfortunately, here's the third, or I don't know what point we're in right now, but unfortunately, a very bad part of the sort of like quick consumption of media was that companies, studios, and productions started rushing things. They started rushing things and not really giving it a good thought about what to really offer to the community, to the consumers, so that they could have a good time, right? And this is something that has been repeated over and over and over again for the past couple of years, and it really saddens me. This is one of those things about the industry that it really saddens me. It doesn't sadden me because of the fail numbers. It saddens me because of the people who are part of the production, and then they suffer, right? And I guess like this is just part of the main talk this week, right? Concord. So Concord is an excellent example of how companies misjudge what the consumers, or we as gamers, for instance, want. And the reason why games like this and projects like this, last year I think it was another one, I don't remember the name. Oh man, no, I forgot the name. It's this girl who has like magic powers, and it looked very pretty, very very nice game from a visual perspective, but it just didn't hit, right? So we've had a lot of bad games in the past couple of years. This is not new. We've had bad games every single year since the existence of games, and you can go back to E.T. in 1980 something. Like, they literally went and buried the games in the desert. So this is not something new. The reason why I think it hurts so much to see games like this fail is because the talent behind this is just, it's not their fault, right? Like, that's my main takeaway from Concord here. Like, I look at the characters, and from a technical perspective, they're perfect. The level of detail, the textures, the rigging, the animation. Even I heard that the programming of the game was good, like there was not as many bugs and stuff like that. So what was the problem? Well, it's the same problem that Marvel has been facing, the same problem DC has been facing, the same problem big blockbuster movies have been facing, like the Borderlands movie a couple of months ago. And the problem is that once things get so big, it's very, very difficult to always nail things, right? Maybe let me rephrase that. Once a business starts seeing entertainment products as a business thing, things get tricky. And the reason why they get tricky is because now not only do they need to make sure that they produce something that works and that it's fun and whatever, they also need to hit certain numbers, they need to hit certain goals and certain metrics, and that kills creativity. And I can tell you guys, even in a small scale, because on some of the projects that I've worked that have been sort of like smaller scales, that happens. Once you start worrying about the numbers and the money and the end result, financially speaking, it really kills creativity. So where do I want to go with this? Because I know this is sounding like a lot of like rambling. If you want to start in this 3D world, right? Like if you want to become a character artist, if you want to work for a game, you need to be very, very honest with yourself on what it is that you value, okay? Because, for instance, if I was an artist on Concord, even though the game completely failed from a business perspective, I would still feel proud about working and doing, like, quality work, again, from a modeling and texturing and character perspective right here. Design-wise, I have another opinion, but we'll talk about that another time. But the fact is, you did a good job, you got paid for it, your game was in a AAA game, even though the AAA game didn't do as well. But if you don't really care about that, like if you really don't care about the prestige of the AAA names and the AAA studios, then let me tell you guys, there's so much work and so many good offers on the indie space. Okay, I've seen so many amazing games. I was talking about this with a student of mine yesterday. I haven't played this one, but I heard it's really good. I heard it's like a Legend of Zelda meets like Dark Souls, because it's a very difficult or at least challenging game. And you take a look at the 3D. Like, I can teach you guys how to do this 3D in a week. Like, you don't really need too many technical knowledge to do this, or like low poly version of 3D. But again, you do need artistic skill. Because remember the little example we talked about at the beginning about the camera, the photograph camera? I can teach you the tools. Like, from a technical standpoint, doing this calculus is not a difficult thing. But you do need to have a very heavy education, again, in color theory, composition, design, and things like that, to make it so that it looks cool. because there are decisions like where to place the crenellations, where to place the columns, how big to make it, how small to make it, how many trees to add. All of those decisions that AI cannot, for instance, think about, just like vomits information. All of those decisions are important decisions, and there is a big difference about those decisions that will make a piece look good and look great. Okay, so the indie scene, I think, has been exploding quite a bit. But again, this is something that we've talked about on the portfolio reviews and on some of the other videos. You need to be very honest with yourself and understand, and this is a quote that I love, that you can have anything, but you cannot have everything. Okay? So listen to that again, and hopefully this resonates with some of you. You can have anything. I'm talking about the 3D industry and all of the things that it entails, but you cannot have everything. What do I mean by this? Well, do you want to work in a AAA studio like Riot, Blizzard, I don't know, Larian Studios, like these very cool studios that are doing super successful games out there? Well, cool. But that means that you might need to travel somewhere else. You're not going to be able to stay close to your family or your friends. You're going to have to be a pixel nomad, as they call it. That's the unfortunate situation of how the world is working right now. Do you want to work there? You might need to do a lot of hours, because I've heard that crunch on some of those studios tends to be very high. But you will get the prestige. You will get very cool portfolio credits and things like that. But you might be like, hey, you know what? I don't really want that, but I really want to make a game that resonates with people. Well, you might be able to work on something like this, but then you will not get the reputation or the credits or whatever else it is. So it's a matter of balancing things out. Another example I can give you, and this is very cool, about the Olympics, right, that we just had. All of those Olympic athletes, they're the best of the best at their respective sports. But you cannot ask a swimmer to do pole vaulting, right? You cannot ask a gymnast to go and fight against one of the taekwondo like fighters. They chose and they decided that there was a specific discipline they wanted to pursue. And it's very difficult again to want to have everything else. Like, you cannot just say I want to be the best athlete at every single sport. Well, it's the same thing here with 3D. The industry is in a position right now where there's a lot of options out there, but you cannot be in all of the options, okay? You cannot be the best in every single space that you are pursuing. So my best advice, especially if you're just starting out, first, learn about the world. Learn about the 3D world. There is hope, okay? Like, the industry is not dying. There are a ton of new projects coming out. There's a ton of new areas and things such as, again, I've mentioned 3D printing, commercials, architectural visualization. Like, if you like 3D as a discipline, right? You can do 3D in a bunch of different areas, not necessarily video games, movies, and commercials. There's a bunch of other things. If you want to pursue this career, be very informed of what that is going to take. Because as I mentioned, with every single choice that you make, you will be making some sacrifices, okay? And some of you might be willing to make those sacrifices. Some of you might say, no, that's not really what I want to do, and I want to take a different path with my life. Perfectly fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking a different path as long as you are doing things the right way and you are following a path that will hopefully get you closer to what you actually want. Okay? So don't let yourself be pressured by someone else or external forces, society, or whatever you want to call it. Focus on what you want to do. Learn the things that you need to learn. Okay? Look for the skills. Look for what is going on around you. Because, again, I'm going to give you another example. Like, if you tell me, hey, I want to do, like, Disney traditional 2D animation and work at Disney, it's like, well, you know, they're not doing that anymore. They might have a small, very small little team doing it. So if this is what you want to do, awesome. But be aware that it might not be possible for you to work at Disney, but you might be able to do your own little short, your own little story, your own film. Like, there's so many surprises in this life, guys, and this is something that I've mentioned before. Like, I was not expecting to be here with you today, teaching you or giving my opinion about this sort of things. But if you let yourself, you know, sort of like flow with what life offers you, like the famous quote, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, right? Well, it's a very similar process. However, you do need to be prepared. You do need to have the tools. You do need to have the skills so that when those opportunities throughout this flow in our life happen, you are able to get the best out of it, okay? So yeah, again, I wanted to make this video. I know it's like a weird video. It's my opinion, again, as I've mentioned. You are, of course, free to have a different one. If you want to share it here in the comments, I'll be more than welcome to have a discussion. But just to sort of like close this off, in the three main topics that I talked about, which is AI, the current industry, and possible options for you as a 3D artist. Well, AI is not going away, but it's not gonna be the destroyer of our like community or our career. There's still gonna be the need to be a 3D artist and know the traditional tools. I do think that it's a good idea to at least be familiarized with some of the tools that you have with AI, because you might find them, especially in some freelance stuff or in smaller studios, where they might ask you, "Hey, we have this model from I don't know, I don't even know what the 3D like apps are, but if they tell you, hey, I have this model, and you need to clean it up, or we have this image from Midjourney and you need to use it as a reference." Well, if you're at least familiarized with how those tools work, you might be more prepared to take the best advantage out of them. But you still need to know other things, okay? You still need to know the proper techniques or the proper workflows that we're normally using, not because that's the rule and it's canon and you cannot do anything other than that, but because most of the studios out there right now are using them. Will they evolve and use other new techniques? Of course, that happens all the time, and you of course need to be always learning and always improving, right? But don't be scared of AI. Second, our industry is recovering. Yes, we had a little bit of a hit on the after COVID. The jobs and what's the word? Jobs, firings, like shrinkage or whatever you want to call it. It's been bad, and I've mentioned this before. It's been like the worst I've seen since I started in 2011. However, I do see glimpses of things starting over again and better. That's one thing that I'm quite happy. At least I'm what's the word? Oh man, I forgot it. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic about this, because when I see now that Marvel, for instance, is taking some decisions on slowing down certain like production rates to make sure that they really nail things, because they saw that they were just turning in a lot of like crap. Well, that makes me hopeful. Seeing games like the Wukong game, like Leal Studios' Baldur's Gate last year, that took several years to do, and people are realizing this is what we want. We want a game that even if it takes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, but it's a good game with the player in mind from the very beginning, we are gonna wait and we're gonna be happy to support that, right? Like I start to see that studios, at least some of them, are listening, or at least they're realizing that the path that they were going with the production of products that were not landing is not the right way to go, right? So I think in the next couple of years things will be a little bit better, and that's again where opportunities will arise. So if you're ready and you have the tools, then those opportunities might be available for you, and that's when you can make that sort of like a jump. And finally, is 3D death as a career or as a possible way to make a living? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's a bunch of other things, especially if you have an open mind and you can work on a bunch of other elements. Right, again, I'm not going to name them again, but if you are open-minded and you want to work on other fields, right, other things that occupy or need 3D, you're going to make a good living, you're going to find a stable position, and you're going to be able to enjoy doing 3D. Then in your free time, you can pursue and do your own personal projects, and who knows, maybe some of those projects will eventually blossom into an amazing game or an amazing production that you're going to be able to share with the world. But one of the things, and I've mentioned this to David and to the team, one of the things that I really think every single artist should be very mindful of is, why are you doing this? Okay? That's a question that you need to ask yourself, and you need to answer it for yourself, because that's a very personal question. So if you're doing this because this is the way that you want to express, this is the way you want to leave a mark in the world, this is the way you want to make money, that's fine. But really find that answer of why you're doing art, especially 3D art, and that answer will guide you through your next decisions, okay? Couple last bits of advice that I can give you guys. Again, keep yourself updated. There's a bunch of new softwares coming out, bunch of new updates that's important to know about. Make sure that you're, again, always learning, always improving, and make sure to surround yourself with a cool community. If you want, we have the Discord. You don't need to talk all the time, but it's good to share your work, ask for feedback, and get to know other people, because those members, those elements, all of those connections that you make could potentially be, again, another door, another opportunity that's going to be available for you, and that will allow you to keep growing in this career. And you're not alone, guys. This is a feeling that I think we fear quite a bit. It's one of those things that we think about, but we don't really express too much. So let me tell you, it's scary. For me, it's also scary to hear about all of this bad news in games and in movies and everywhere. But hope is the last thing that dies. I'm not sure if that's the proper translation, or hope dies last. I don't know. I've always been a very hopeful person, and I always like to see the good side in things. So I truly believe that things will get better, and we need to be on the lookout for those opportunities, okay? To see how best we can use our skills, remember, the camera, not just the tool, the skills, the knowledge, to get or to create amazing things. Thank you very much, my friends. I'll see you back on the next one. Make sure to tune in for our live stream tomorrow if you're watching this on Thursday. And yeah, other than that, just thank you. Thank you very much for all of your support. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.